Hey everybody, welcome to Tavern Talks. Hopefully you can hear me at this point, but yeah, we had a little bit of Streamlabs difficulty as it seemed to be affecting us. For all of you that have known and worked with Streamlabs or OBS, you know that Streamlabs takes up about 80% of resources compared to OBS. So hopefully here soon we can move away from that and life will feel a little bit more natural. But tonight is not what we're talking about. We're not talking about Streamlabs or OBS. We are going to be talking about improv comedy and how to implement that into your own games. And who better to do that with? By somebody who's a professional at it. So that's what I brought on today. So today I would like to introduce you all to Angelica Zadak, who is over there at This Is Improv. But I'm not going to talk anymore about this. She can. So I'm going to hand it off to her.
Oh, wow, I'm catching it. I got it.
Did you catch it?
I caught it. It's
Good.
Right here. Yeah, I got the.
I actually threw it.
all the way here. All the way here. Threw it again. I caught it again.
Look at that.
For once in my life, I'm good at sports. It's insane.
See, I'm not that way. Like, wow. Over time, I've learned how to be good at sports, I guess is the best way to put it. I've took on multiple coaching positions since my kids have become into sports, not knowing anything about sports at the time. But I've learned. Because you can teach anybody something. It's just, I don't know how good I'd be at actually doing the sport. So
yeah, I mean, if you can watch them and coach them,
right. It's right, like, yeah, and it gives me that enjoyment and spending time, and now I've stepped on even worse ideas, and now my son is in martial arts, and as of January, I decided, hey, why not join? So at 37 years old, I was like, guess what? We're going to learn how to do martial arts. It is a lot of falling. It is a lot of pain. But I've actually enjoyed it, and it's a good time to spend with him. So I'm going to keep doing it as long as my body will allow me to.
That's awesome.
So yeah.
When I turned 20, now I'm 30. When I turned 20, I was like, this is it. I'm going to learn how to do martial arts. It's going to be great. And I called and they told me, so this is for your kid? And I said, no, it's for me. And they said, I've started my training late too. I was like, you know what? I'm okay.
I'm like, right. Wow, make me feel great. Like, yeah. Thanks. Yeah. No, my son's martial arts they just put a black belt on to a guy who's in his 70s.
What?
Yes.
That feels incredible.
Right? So I was like, as much as it's kind of that motive of like, okay, this man can't be any more beat up than I am. Like, he's got to be more beat up than I am. So let's continue to try to pull this off.
That's pretty cool.
My next scare is having to learn how to do, flips and stuff, because that stuff just sounds terrible. But
it sounds terrifying.
It is. It's terrifying. Yeah. I watch my kids do it, and I'm just like, okay, yeah, your little bones and your little body can recover so fast. I do one small twitch movement difference, right, and I'm out for 2 weeks. Like, this is what's going to happen. I promise.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, maybe they'll be different. Maybe they'll be like that 70-year-old man.
Yeah.
That can last. I tried to do that. Like, I made a monk character once, and she was supposed to be like Ip Man, but she had to be old. And because I had made so many young characters because I was starting out, and I'm like, this is how you do it. And
right.
So I was experimenting with that, and I was like, yes, she's older, she's the wise one, and she can do martial arts. It's fantastic. It's great. She's great. Best fighter.
Yeah. Until she breaks a hip, and she's out for 2 weeks. That's what
they don't have anything for that. Like,
they don't. No, yeah. I mean, they're different. There are mechanics that are third-party mechanics you can implement for stuff like that, like broken bones and stuff like that. But it's not common. And you have to have a certain type of table for that, because a lot of people don't want to have a table where their character actually gets injured and doesn't recover. So there's problems there. Right. So. Yeah, tell us a little bit about you now that we've went on our rant of martial arts, because that was fun.
That it was a lot of fun. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Hey everyone. So now you know a little bit about me and my field of martial arts journey. That lasted literally a phone call long. My name is Angelica, and I am one of the owners, one of the founders of This Is Improv. I founded it with my sister, Alexandra, and
Okay.
yeah, we do our thing in South Florida. We're in the Broward County area, and we do a ton of stuff. But at our core, what we do is we do education, so teaching people about improv, what it's about, how to perform improv. We do training, so we go into corporate. We train professionals how to implement improv into what they do for work, and then we provide entertainment. So we do shows, we create content, we have a blast with each other, and that's a little bit about what we do.
Sounds cool. So how did this blend into TTRPGs?
Well, it's crazy. It started in college for
Okay.
me, and it was one of my professors. So I started out not with improv. Like, how does one do improv? Like, how does one get into improv? And
Theater.
exactly, theater kids for life. One of my professors, he was awesome, Dan Geldman, and he was a nerd. He was a huge nerd at the time when before Game of Thrones last season. We would like talk about nerdy stuff. And towards the end of my college career, as I was starting the company with my sister, he introduced me and then my sister to Dungeons and Dragons. And it was really cool to see how the two things blended.
Hmm.
More like he understood how it went with theater, and he was really the one who introduced it to a lot of people at my college, like slowly what it was about and how to use what we've been learning, and then it just became a part of life from there.
Yeah, feel that.
Yeah.
I think it's happened that to a lot of people, and I think one way is it almost gives that opportunity for escapism, so you can kind of pull yourself away, you can be somebody else for a moment, and it helps a lot of people deal with things that way. And funny enough, I tell this joke all the time, and everybody laughs about it. Is the fact that everybody says, "Oh, theater kid, lifetime theater person." I've never done theater in my life, ever in my life. And I said, "Oh, I'm going to start a stream." Like I knew nothing what I was talking about. I'm
But
a
I think that's so cool. I think the transition that's happening, like there's pros, cons to social
Mhm.
media, be in the spotlight, everything like that. But like we finally have a platform where we feel like we can be ourselves. Before
Mhm.
there wasn't really a stage to play. It was difficult
It
to.
was hidden.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And now it's become more accessible. And so more people can find like their community, more people can find fellow weirdos to
Yep.
play with, and that's cool.
No, it is, and it's one thing that I've really enjoyed about, it, especially with this show here, is that
Mhm.
I have met so many people through this thing, which is
Yeah.
awesome, and so many very unique individuals in their own aspect on that were able to use this tool of TTRPGs to enhance their lives in one way or another. I actually am going to a show on Saturday that is ran by our local um, improv theater. So
Uh-huh.
they do every other Saturday is D&D night. So they do a D&D
Very
improv
cool.
show. But
And I love that. So many improvisers are diving into like Dungeons and Dragons as their platform because it's so it just lends itself. The
mhm,
role playing itself is just like a playground to explore, to play with different fantastical characters that you
mhm,
wouldn't typically, from the improviser's perspective, like we don't typically get to play that way. We have to be super relatable in the sense of like, hey, we all have jobs, right? Hey, we all get into funky situations with our partners, right?
yeah.
So
And then you're like, but actually, there's also all this other stuff I can talk about. Like,
exactly. Yeah, but like it doesn't come to people's minds, and I practice a lot of like our group does a lot of short form improv.
okay,
So we are constantly in communication with the audience. With the longer form improv, like you get one-off suggestions and it
Mm-hmm.
works out. It's awesome. So both we rely on the audience to kind of know where to go and to lead us into a direction.
Got it.
So what we have is like with the group that you're going to see, which is dope. They have a platform, and people come in. They know they're going to get some Dungeons and Dragons, some gameplay in there,
Mm-hmm.
RPG style stuff. So they're coming with suggestions and ideas that give the players inspiration to do it, and
Right.
that's really cool. A while back, um, I had a teacher, Anthony LeBlanc, and he's in Second City, or he was in Second City. He worked there for a while. Now he moved to LA, and he helped create this D&D long form show. It was like one of the first D&D shows. It was like 10 years ago maybe. And it was so cool to see, and like
Yeah.
the people who started doing that started doing things like Tavern talks with Earwolf, and it became a community of like creators who know about this other world, like tabletop games. Like
Right.
let's get together on our own fandom and make something cool out of it.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. And like I said, I had them on the show about a few months. Oh, it's been probably about a year at this point. But that's what kind of happened is I saw it pop up, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, look, there's a local one here. And then I went, and I will tell you, the only difference is that every theater person has a role. So you, as the game master, don't get to control the monsters, you don't get to control the NPCs, you don't get to control the players. So at this point, you're just herding cats left and right. And I've talked to their game master many times, and he's like, I give everyone like 2 sentences and then let them go. But all of them have been through their improv classes and their setup and everything like that. So they're all very well versed in this mentality of improv.
Mm-hmm.
But for people like myself, for people that are just coming on, like watching the stream, what are some things that you might be able to give them to be like, hey, try this next time a scenario happens?
I am definitely familiar with the herding cats scenario, both as a GM and as a player. They like you feel it both ways, and the coolest thing to do is say, "What if I said yes to this?" or "What if I did go down this path?" In improv, we say yes and.
Right.
So when we talk about yes and, we say yes. We're accepting your reality. Yes. Okay. So you brought this thing into the world. You made gold sentient. Cool. Because you did it. Now it exists in the world. Now it's canon.
Right.
And now, how do we deal with that as as a GM, as a player in this world, reacting as the character that we've created? So that's the coolest thing. That's number one. Number two is, how do you have fun with the characters that you create? How do
Right.
you have fun making the person that you first had on paper? You said, hey, let me, like, I want to make this. I want to add on this characteristic. I want this background. How do you make it fun for you? How do you
Mm-hmm.
make it something that you're going to enjoy playing? And even if it doesn't go the direction you want it to go, what are you going to do then? Like before the stream started, before the stream started,
Yep.
we were talking about my last character was a grung fighter.
Mm-hmm.
And I specifically made the grung fighter, and I do this quite a bit. Like I base it off of a character that exists,
Yeah.
actor, whatever. I based this one off of Tim Curry. Did the Pirates of Penzance, and he has a musical number. So I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to make a grung who loves musical theater. He's going to be chaotic, and the secret he has is that he so with Grung, they in the book when they introduce Grung, they say that the poison kind of is used to control people.
Right.
So I talked to my GM and I made that like a key feature. Like this is real in this world.
Right.
So it was kind of awkward because my grung tried to tongue everyone and everything. Yes, because of saliva. I also made grung boba tea at one point.
There you go.
Yeah, kind of disgusting because grung eggs were the boba. Totally
Oh,
cool. Yeah. But the secret is that controlling all these character or trying to control all these people, not used to build an army necessarily, but to build a cast of characters to perform musical theater with my character. Here's the thing. I created this whole vision for what the character was going to be,
right.
but I was able to capture hardly anyone for my musical cast, and I had to deal with these are the character traits I established for my character, and
they're not working.
They're not working. How do I incorporate? How do I grow as a character?
Right.
Instead of trying to push against this thing that's not working, how do I make it work for the rest of the players, so that I'm not the jerk of the table, kind of just
right.
Causing problems by tonguing everything? And how do I grow as a living being, learning from the experience and understanding hey, this might not work out. How do I change my strategy here?
Kind of shifting or slowly twisting the character to a point where it's actually being effective with the party members and things like that, right?
Exactly.
And that's a big one I do notice a lot, especially for newer players, but also for very veteran players, because a lot of them, they've done so many different types of characters, and they're the ones that want to branch out to that very odd, very minute, detailed portion of a character. And it's great if everybody's on board with that. But if you don't have everybody on board with that, now you have to kind of take that dance and twist and pull and kind of mold a similar version, but not the exact, because like you said, I'm not getting anybody. So what do I do now? I'm going to have to change my aspect a little bit. Maybe I instead am trying to befriend people rather than control, or I'm trying.
What you should be doing in everyday
Correct.
life. Yeah.
But or maybe I need to figure out a way to utilize this in very minute moments where it's not expected to work, because those are always the fun times when you're like, oh, it worked, right? So those are always interesting points. We were talking about this before the stream, of course, as well, where my players decided that they wanted to completely rearrange my campaign last night. We are, as most people know, I run a stream campaign on Gen Con's channel on Monday nights. But on Tuesday nights, because I didn't want to start losing my mind and going into 4 different settings, I said, hey guys, can we play an Icewind Dale as well? So that I at least know the setting, and I'm in the setting quite often due to the stream. My players were okay with it, but they wanted to throw a curveball because they got caught. And they, instead of trying to fight their way out, they persuaded their way out by convincing the NPCs and the bad guy at the time that they were acolytes of Tiamat. And by doing so, they were trying to hand out pamphlets that they didn't have. They decided that they didn't have pamphlets. They went back to the inn and they made pamphlets. And this continued until they decided they were going to go peek into another home. They broke into the home. They found a room that had some paints in it. Not knowing what these paints are, they used them. And now we have a paper Tiamat running around 10 towns, because this is what happens when you let players just do what they want. However, it was very rewarding to the players, right? Because they're what they wanted to do, they were able to do, and the dice were being nice that night. I don't know what was going on. Normally, the dice never are nice, but it was for me. It was at least. But it's an interesting concept because now we're trying to figure out what does that mean, right? And those are the I did the yes and maybe I did the yes and too much because now I have to come up with what is the next step of the puzzle piece? Because now we have a inanimate Tiamat running around terrorizing 10 towns as a piece of paper. So
Yeah, that can be problematic. Can be
a little bit.
Yeah. But just saying this again, Tiamat, adorable. The
Right.
sketch, adorable.
Yeah.
If I was to have anything monstrous, I mean, I have 2 little dogs, so I'm used to monstrosities running amok that are like tiny and cute.
Yeah.
But with this story, you made me the second time telling me because we did talk.
Yes, we did talk.
When we do improv too, there are different forms. There are different format styles, ways that we know the story is going to go. So usually when we have improvisers playing together, just like we know the rules of D&D, this is we have a rule book, we understand how this works. It's just like improv. We have tons of books that tell us hey, here's a tip. If they say this, do that. Do a handstand. Don't do hands.
Don't do hands.
Don't do hands. I am scared of going upside down. Anyway, so we have all these rules. We have all these tips as improvisers. So we have all these different structures. So there's something called the Herald that's formatted with a almost 3-act structure in a way.
Okay.
We have short form, so it's very snippety type pieces, almost micro sketch work, and we have different styles of long form, where we get LeBron, where we get different characters, etc. There's so many different styles of improv, and then we look at D&D. And we know how it's supposed to work. We have the storybook. We have the storyline right in front of us. Now, what if we were to add, and if you're doing a homebrew, you have these ideas, depending on how detailed you go, you might have your own book fully constructed. By allowing, if you were to allow your players to, yes and Tiamat coming to life as people.
Right.
It's almost like you're adding another page. It's a side quest. It's a side thing that you're doing in there, and you're yes-anding it. You're going back to the structure. You have that to guide you, and I think that's a cool, powerful thing. In sketch writing, we call that a beat sheet. We essentially outline. If we don't know where we're going, but we have an idea of what the idea is going to be, then we create a beat sheet. And in between the beat sheet, we're allowed to improvise as much as we'd like while staying to the story. And if your players know, hey, we're going door to door, we got caught, but the intention is still to go back to the story. We just have this we have this block in the road, we might have another pet. We might have a.
Please don't tell my players to keep the paper Tiamat. This is going to be a terrifying.
I would never tell them to keep the paper monster. But it's you never know what's going to happen. But that's that's something cool and creative. If you go that way, knowing we're shifting back, we all know, and that's something too. The ensemble. So in improv, we call it the ensemble. The group that we're playing with, the group we're performing with. So we all have to be on the same page. We're working together. And we understand that, we're not looking necessarily to shine or hold on to the spotlight or totally take over the story. We're all working together in the moment to write the story, to perform in the story, to create what's going on. So there's almost like a sense of trust. There's the community there that we're moving this forward. We're making choices for the betterment of the story, not just because we want to cause chaos. And I
Right.
know it's hard because we get
No, it
excited
is, and you're
about big
absolutely true.
monsters. Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And this kind of pile or can tie into what the audience is asking right now. So they said this can be hard, especially if there's a limited opportunity to seek out character growth. Sometimes a party simply isn't ready for the moments to happen, and a conjoined team continues to hobble on. Uh, what would be your suggestion or tip for this member?
So thinking about different things, if they're inexperienced, my thing, both in improv, D&D, is let's create something a little bit smaller, something a little bit more manageable. So they learn how to create something and thrive in something with like smaller stakes. So if you have a larger campaign going, usually it's built in. If it's like an easier campaign, where there are smaller quests, there are smaller points before you get into the main story that almost act as a way for them to understand who they are to each other,
Hmm.
and to understand how the game operates, how everything operates. What I do personally in that aspect too is if we jump right into the action, if it's something harder, I'll create like something small, like a meeting place and a meeting quest or something, so that they have that time where they can play with each other, they can understand each other, see where everyone is at,
Hmm.
like almost a point five session, point five, not quite zero, but point five.
Correct. Yeah, I've seen
And
the.
when you're doing improv, it's the same thing. Like before you get into, masterful improv moves, masterful jokes, being Steve Martin, whatever, you're not Tina Fey yet. That's right, because Tina Fey practiced.
Yeah, she's been
She
doing this for 20 years, or
exactly.
more.
Yeah. So how do we like guide them? How do we give them that practice, that experience before we jump into it? Because sometimes uh, and it's hard for experienced players who are looking for community, and they're like, this is awesome, let me show you how awesome this is. When I found this, it was magical, I was with experienced players, this is what it is. And
Hmm.
then you get a new bunch and they're like, what how so what does this dice do? And then this one does that. Okay, all right, okay. And
But
it's
now I have another dice here that I don't know what this one does at all. Like,
I don't touch that one. That one
yeah,
stays put. I use that as
right.
my tower.
Yeah, that's the one that just chills there and doesn't do anything. And I won't use that dice. I don't
Yeah.
think. But yeah, that I hope that kind of helped a little bit. But I like the idea though that you are, if they can't get the puzzle that you're trying to give them, and puzzles can be anything, but I say puzzle in a very abstract way because everything has a problem and everything has a solution. So that's the puzzle. But for things such as large form, long term quests,
Mhm.
breaking those down into pieces is a perfect way to slowly get your players to get used to that mentality. So hopefully, Chelsea, that helps. I know we've spoken before about your group, and a lot of times it does feel like they're just kind of hobbling along. Um, my suggestion of that personally is take tropes that work properly in the world. If you need and I know a lot of people are not against, are kind of against this railroad idea, but if you need a Gandalf that gives you the quest that tells you exactly where to go, and then you get them there and they solve that puzzle, they're in that routine then. And then they understand, okay, I can accept something from someone, I can follow what they said, and then I can do the end and I can finish the result. And then as they get used to that point, then you can start sprinkling in other pieces to that. I guess that would be my suggestion. I don't know if you have anything additional to add to that.
I
So,
love that. Like
yeah.
Gandalf all the way character, the ultimate wise guide.
Hmm.
And sometimes, like, we do that in improv. It's support, even from
Yeah.
your GM, even anyone who has experience. If you can help in some way, help in some way.
Ooh, okay. I was talking about character development in order to better fit your PC into the party or campaign. I don't play TTRPGs or run a campaign myself. Okay. Hmm. I'll let you take this first, and then I'll pick up the pieces.
Let's see if I answer this right.
I don't believe I don't believe there's any wrong or right answer on these. I just think that you probably have a different side of this than I would,
Yeah.
as a
Let me
professional
totally
improv.
ruin
So
your campaign forever by giving this wonderful advice. So, as far as character work, if we're getting this correct, developing characters that fit the greater story,
yeah.
their own PC.
Hmm.
So something we can do is one activity I really like is an improv game called painting characters. So painting characters is almost like doing a character analysis. You can do it base level or you can go deeper level with it. And what you do is you essentially take a character and you paint different features on them. So you might say this character wears round glasses with no lens because they think that round glasses look cool. This character has a little handkerchief in their pocket that they rub when they feel scared because they think it might help them get magical powers because their mommy said so. So adding little things like that, you can go deeper. You can say this character has a scar across their face because they got into a battle that stuck with them forever. It was the Battle of Loris. So whatever you want to do, adding on to these characters, it can help. And something fun to do too, to make it communal, might be going around the table during your session 0. If you want to go really in depth, have a lot of time spent here, you can have each player give one characteristic at a time and see, like, hey, does this spark something? Does this inspire something? Oh, I didn't think about that. It would be nice if we knew each other before and your scar, I gave you that scar, or I saw the person who gave you the scar. And it can spark some ideas. Some people want to withhold things. Totally cool as far as character development, story development goes.
Right.
That might be one tool to bring the table together.
I like the painting the picture thing, or the painting the character thing. I think that's a lot. It's a neat way to do it, and I do believe that it's a perfect opportunity during a session 0, especially when you have your game master there, and he can say, this is what we're setting up in the world area. You guys are starting here. This is what I'm seeing in the big picture. Let's start sprinkling in those features that you have. So, if everybody is running around in giant coats, and you guys are playing in the desert, it's probably not going to work. Just saying. Or vice versa. Like in my situation, everybody, if you don't have a giant coat on and you're in Icewind Dale, you're going to freeze to death.
Right.
Just what happens.
Which is super cool if you like ice sculptures.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or snowmen.
Yeah.
We had somebody chasing somebody else around with an animated snowman.
Yeah, and Jack Frost, gotta love Jack Frost.
Gotta love Jack Frost. Yeah. The snow miser, he's always a good guy too. He comes out every once in a while.
Yeah, that heat miser.
Yeah, he's got to stay on the other side of the world. Can't be up here.
Yeah, a little hot-headed. So
a little bit.
I'm happy he's there. Yeah.
Yeah. Doesn't have cold feet.
Can't have cold feet in a campaign, then we get nowhere.
Yeah, true. So, but magical boots. True. Magical boots.
Magic boots.
Magical boots keep you warm. Just remember that.
Magic boots are made for walking. And that's what we're going to do. One of these days, these magical boots are going to
walk all over Icewind Dale.
Yeah. That's something cool too. Like any aspect, anything that we bring in as far as like a piece of clothing, a weapon, it can hold some value for your character.
Hmm.
So if you're ever having issue, at least from the character perspective, at least from the improv perspective, if you say like, why does it matter to me, or why do I want this thing, like
Hmm.
what's the point? That's just one thing that can help as a jumping off point to character development. We also have this thing in improv called "If this is true, what else is true?" So, just like with painting a character, you're talking about that. You can
Hmm.
expand on whatever you add on. Um, and then you have, if this is true, what else is true? So if you establish one thing about your character, like I have a scar that was given to me in the battle of so and so. If that's true, then can we say that you have a mortal enemy because of the scar that was inflicted? If that's true, okay. What else is true? I have a scar that was inflicted on me. People don't like to interact with me because they think I'm dangerous because I have a scar across my face. Okay, if that's true, what else is true? The scar on my face was so bad that it was infected for a week, whatever, and
Right.
I had to live in a hospital. So a good week of my life was lived in a hospital, depending on how bad the cut was. The wound
Right.
was if that's true, who did you meet at the hospital? What relationships did you build? Did you learn anything? Did something happen there? And there are all these branches. It's also kind of like mind mapping, but from an improviser's perspective,
Right. And
where
I
you're
like the
creating
idea that it's
branches.
all only one item too. So you're like,
Yeah,
oh, if the scar is true, then what else is true? Okay,
right.
if the scar is true, what else is true?
Hmm.
And you've built just off of one item, you've built potentially a mortal enemy. You have
Yeah,
an entire other kingdom of some sort now because you
exactly.
somebody had to come in and take over. You
Hmm.
were in a hospital, so now you have other NPCs that can show up throughout the campaign that you've
Hmm.
already know and have a reaction to. Maybe you have met a friend there. Maybe you've met, maybe you caught somebody, you did something there that you can now expand on again.
Hmm.
But that all came from you literally just saying, I have a scar on my hand. What
Exactly.
else is next? Right.
And that's the crazy thing. We think, and we tend to think with creativity, I'll say generally,
Hmm.
with story building, with coming up with these aspects, these characteristics. It's so hard. We have to know so much. We have to like do research. We have to like we couldn't possibly know what's going on in this person's life. But if we bring it back to the things that we do know, like how do we work with what we do know, just as a basis? Because I believe half of the fun of creating fun, wonky characters is researching if this was something that would be true. Okay,
Yeah.
like in my imagination, yeah, but I also kind of want to know what would happen realistically if I were to like try to like serenade someone. Like how do sound waves work? Would that work underwater? Would that work in high altitudes? Like both is fun, and I think that's something cool. Like with improv, a lot of the time we're doing it on stage, and
Hmm.
you'll see that too with live D&D streams.
Right.
There's not quite a lot of time to do that additional research, but if you're just having fun with your friends, you can kind of like say, "Wait, guys, wait, let me look this up. Hold on, just a minute," and that's a whole other conversation and a whole other way to kind of build your relationship with the people at the table, with the
Hmm.
people you are building this community, this ensemble with. And I think that's a ton of fun too. The creative, wonky stuff, super fun. I'm here for it. Do it. Say yes. And research if you have time, because that could be a whole other ball game that you
Whole
want
other
to
ball
prepare
game.
for. Yeah, whole other bowling ball
Yeah.
game.
Also, I will give the my little extra bonus point that I usually give to people, which is if you like modules, take two and smash them together and see what you get, because that's always fun. So, which is what we're doing right now. Now that we've added Tiamat to our Icewind Dale campaign, now we're going to start diving into what
That's
what does that mean? Which now we can connect that with Horde of the Dragon Queen. So now we can bring uh, the Cult of the Dragon into the puzzle piece. And now the Cult of the Dragon might potentially raid Icewind Dale, but who knows? we'll find out what happens next week.
That is fun.
So, but yeah, that's and I think it's something really interesting that we've started to explore in different campaigns is like that concept, right? Now we've brought this into the world. What's the aftermath? What's the reaction? What is the ending result of what we just did? For instance, there is a very very dramatic moment that's going to happen next week on Monday for our stream campaign.
Ooh.
Because their story had just ended after a massive battle that has killed off half of this town.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean to people? Like we're going to find that out next week, which is going to be interesting because this area is supposed to be hidden from the world. It's the only area within Icewind Dale that is not currently being struck by ice. It's not currently being struck by nighttime. So now that they've been raided by the orcs that are trying to stop that from happening, and we have bodies laying everywhere as if we're thinking of a massive battlefield that's happened throughout the entirety of the village. Mm-hmm. What is that going to do to the town? What is that going to do to our players? We already know that we have a few, after some quick talks, and this is a spoiler for people who haven't watched it yet, but our players have now made a vendetta to finish off the orcs. They've decided that they're not going to go back to their original game plan right now. Their goal now is to revenge the town that they were just trying to help protect, to the point where they're going deeper into the snow. So we'll see what happens next week on that one. So, but yeah, I like that idea of, if this happens, what actually is the result, right? So,
and I think that's cool too, because I think that's one of the things that makes D&D so powerful as well, because unlike things that are, I love video games are great.
Oh, same.
That's like how before D&D there was World of Warcraft for me, but something that we
Wait,
can't
before Dungeons and Dragons there was World of
Warcraft? Yeah, I was like, we can go deeper, I can role play harder.
Oh,
but I
knew Dungeons and Dragons before I knew what World of Warcraft was. So
I was a very pretentious night elf. Very pretentious. I was
very pretentious.
We didn't cause any issues. We are the good ones, blood elves. Yeah. You're terrible. And my friend and I would debate consistently. We would go through the lore pages. Anywho, don't play World of Warcraft with me. So with Dungeons and Dragons, something cool is, we have the book, we have the lore, we have the modules we're playing. We have, this idea in our head, but it's not a fixed program.
Right.
We can move past, we're not sim characters that are kind of bouncing against a chair because
right. They're not stuck in a spot. They're not stuck in a point where they don't have that reaction, right?
Exactly.
We're not in a program, so exactly. A plus B doesn't have to equal C all the time. Mm-hmm. It's just not how that works.
And that's what life is.
Yeah.
That's what life is all about. It's improvising our way through we don't know what's going to happen. We have all these skills that we learned, like martial arts, or didn't learn. And we have all these different tricks that really have gotten us through life this far. But we don't really know what's going to happen. Prediction, sure, whatever, but we don't know. So all we can do is move forward. All we can do is test something out, try to problem solve, see if that works, and then see the end result. And that's what D&D does. We can realistically do that. Only the GM kind of almost, in some cases, knows where this is going to go before the rest of the group, and then in some cases they're finding out with the table. So it's this really cool, organic, magical thing that is so similar to what we experience in life, and I think that's why a lot of people are attracted to it too. If they're going super role play-esque, because they're experiencing something where, like you said, we can escape, we can become someone else, and we have these different tools, these different cool aspects about us where we're still making choices like we would in normal life. Like we can
Right.
still die in the game,
Yeah.
but like you get to see how this evolves in almost like a shorter time frame, like faster, seeing how it would evolve, and with super cool powers and like awesome strength, and like if you're not really that smart, there you can just roll the dice depending on what you're playing, and maybe your intelligence checks out there, bud.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe it checks out. Or the dice are going to say you drank a little bit too much that night and you don't, not really thinking through.
Or Constitution.
But, yeah, Constitution's a dangerous thing. Anyway, so I think this is interesting, and I think it's been a lot of help to walk through some very cool tricks that you've utilized, especially for session 0, which I think a lot of people, they think session 0 is just let's sit down, build characters, and let's move forward. Using tricks like this, we don't just get to build characters and move forward, we get to build characters together, so that when you do come to the table at the beginning of the first session, everybody kind of has an idea of a direction they want to go, and you can go on it together, rather than having that danger moment where one player wants to do one thing and the rest of the party wants to do a different thing, and now we've got this conflict, but the conflict doesn't end at the table, and that's where it needs to end. It needs to end at the table. Once it starts stumbling past the table, then we have bigger problems, and I always warn people on that one. So
yeah, and like that's why I think it's important to have the rapport outside, because it's the same with improv. We might be in each other's faces, fighting each other, yelling at each other, screaming at each other for a moment, or really pick on something that, because we know this pushes a button with the other person, because we know who we're playing with. So why not push that button?
Right? But what is this gonna do? Tell me.
After it's all said and done, if we're respecting the boundaries, right? If we know the boundaries, if we put them out there, if we respect them, then after all that's said and done, after the character's out of the way at the table, you should be, you should be happy with each other. You should be laughing about how stupid that was. And that I really do believe that the rapport you build around the table, just like standing each other, listening to each other's ideas, and even if it's not what you all end up doing, listening is so important. And with the yes and technique, we use it a lot, almost like as reflective kind of work. So literally, one of the exercises we'll do is we'll say yes, repeat what the person has said, and then say like what our idea is, or say like what track we want to go on. And it just shows the other person that we're listening to what they're saying, instead of like them feeling like we're steamrolling. Like we've heard what you said, but we're taking a moment, we're stepping back to let you know, to understand we heard it. We're not steamrolling. This is what we're pitching as a new idea to move forward. And session 0, again, I got super lucky. My professor was a theater person, so he loved to talk. He's a communicator too, and he's one of the people who taught me session 0 was so important, because if we don't establish right off the bat how we're working together, then we're going to be finding ways. And so many games are like one-player games that we play. So many games are competitive games that we play. Even tabletop games, it's playing against who you're at the table with.
Right.
Not always.
Not always. You're right.
Always.
But it does happen.
Right. So we're almost like taught to do this competitive play, which is so much fun. I'm super competitive too. Again, Night Elf, don't play World of Warcraft with me. Anyway, so the session 0 became so important, and we even had I've definitely been a part of, I'm not a fantasy story. I've been a part of tables where like one person wants to take control, one person has created a character that does not listen to the rest of the group. And what do you do to get back on track?
Hmm.
Sometimes you can't. Sometimes someone does need to be kicked from the troop, or you need to leave the troop, and it's a reality
It
because
is.
the rapport that you're building, like that's what matters. And if something happens that's breaking the rapport deeper than like just a character issue,
Mhm.
it's a player issue, not willing to play with the group, and that's part of it too. Everything that we do is we're working with other people, we're communicating with other people. So what's your next step? And that's
Yeah,
something you have to be ready for.
especially the game master. It's one of those things where sometimes you have to make that bad call, that heavy call,
Mm-hmm.
um, because you have to make that decision of, do I let the one player completely just push the rest of the players to having a horrible time,
Mm-hmm.
including yourself half the time? I mean, if you're the one that's always having to mitigate that conflict all the time as the game master, not only is it not fun for your players, most likely, it's definitely not fun for you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which I know a lot of people are against this, but in my opinion, is if you are the game master and not having fun, then you're not at your table, proper
Yeah.
table, because I did, and I know I've talked about this on the show before. Is I did for 2 years, almost 3 years, I ran professional games where they're like, oh, you must cater to your audience. Kind of. I had one player literally tell me, "So I can't die," and I was like, "No, no, no, no! You're not the right table. If that's what you think is going to happen." I was like, "I'm known to kill players. The reason is though is not because I like to kill them; it's because I like to see what happens in the aftermath. Because normally I won't let a character die unless it's going to tell a story that's actually going to make sense. If the dice are just being nasty that night, you
Mm-hmm.
might get knocked out, you might get carried away, and your players might need to come rescue you. But I'm not going to kill you off directly." Um, I personally have a caveat to that, and that is that if you don't make death seem real, then yes, I will kill your player off. But that's me.
Ooh, I like that. I like that.
So my players all know this, and this goes for both my streams and my home games.
Uh-huh.
Um, when a character drops, it needs to be a big deal. It doesn't. You don't know that you have 3 rounds left. You don't.
Mm-hmm.
And I've proven this to players many times when I watch them look at me weird when I go, okay, nobody, whole round went by and nobody reacted until the enemy gets to this player.
Uh-huh.
And they're a smart character as an enemy. So
Mm.
what do? They double tap.
Oh.
That's two failed saves.
Uh-huh.
If you're the player the next round and you roll bad, you're dead. Plain and simple.
I just read an article that included Monty Python because like I'm a
Yeah.
nerd, so I'm an improv nerd, sketch nerd too. I
Yeah,
read
so if you
about
don't know Monty Python, there's something wrong with you.
yeah. I mean, get on some musical theater again. Spam a lot.
Yeah.
You can find that on YouTube, kind of, or through legit means you can listen to the soundtrack anywhere. So with that, they were talking about like staying in character because so much of their comedy is absurdism,
Oh
and
goodness, yes.
yes, it's awesome. And so the director of Spamalot, because that's the article I was reading, and Spamalot is essentially the Knights of the Holy Grail. It's that on stage.
Hmm.
Anywho, uh, look it
I
up.
haven't
Otherwise,
I
watch
haven't
watch
seen
the
it.
movie.
I haven't seen the Broadway yet for it. I really want to, but or the theater for it, but yeah.
I think it's coming back, or it did come back, but it's a little. It. I'm a little older now. It was a 2006 type of early 2000s rendition
On
thing.
a funnier note on that though is, did you know that there is a TTRPG that Monty Python wrote?
What?
There is a
It's
Monty
an
Python
official.
TTRPG official.
Whoa. Okay, I know what I'm doing later. Making some purchases. Okay. Anywho,
Yeah. Yeah, Monty
so
Python's co-curricular medieval enactment program,
that
and they literally sold 15,000. They had 15,000 backers on their Kickstarter.
that sounds like required backing.
Yeah, it's
Required backing. Yeah.
yeah. So
Um, So the director from Spamalot was saying to their cast, if you don't take yourself seriously, how do you expect the audience to take you seriously? And it's comedy. You're like, why should I take myself seriously in comedy? And the
Yeah.
reason is that it's so much more fun. It's so much more fun to take yourself seriously, to like actually get into the death. Like, I'm going to die, my best friend is going to die, or the person that I've become so close with is going to die. And because if that's what you're playing, like if that's one of the reasons you're playing, to immerse yourself into this world, into this character, then go all the way with it. Have fun with it. Be that character. I'm not one to say like you have to do voices, you have to play it out. I like playing it out sometimes because I'm an improviser.
There you go.
But if that's what you're called to do, let loose, go crazy, take that character seriously, because that can be so much fun and so rewarding. And if you take yourself seriously, just like the director said, your player, like your fellow players, are going to take it seriously. And when you're all in that same magical place, like you're living the world together, then it's awesome. It's awesome. It doesn't have to be a death scene.
It doesn't.
Death is fun. Death is fun. Anything that you do, if you take it seriously, far can it go? What would my character really do here? And how do I really, I'll say, ham it up? How do you really ham it up and make it seem like it's worthwhile for you?
Right.
And I think that's so much fun.
Yeah, how do you ramp up those moments that are super exciting, right? That's the big question, and I think it's the big question a lot of players and game masters all are asking is we've got this table and it's super great and I'm having fun with all my friends. How do I spotlight those moments that are just over the top? And I think the best way I would say is let them be over the top. What does it matter? First off, it's a fantasy world. Who cares? If all of your players are having this great moment, why not allow that moment to happen? Or let the dice decide. That's always a fun option.
Both are great. Let them have that moment. See how you can contribute to that moment as a game master. What can you, just like you poke fun at your friends because you know that they like or dislike something,
right?
What can you do to amplify that moment? If someone loses their fire stick, their torch, and rolled off, and it's at the worst possible moment, it as a GM, it's at the worst possible moment. If we're playing this game, it's a game, how can you, does it hit oil? Is there oil there that leads to this leads to a river that sends the river aflame, and then down the river is a path to the enemy, and the enemy is literally given a path to your location via river? And what can you do with it to amplify what's going on and play with that? And then with with finding those moments for fun, what would you find? How could you have the most fun in that moment? What is fun for you? And I think you said that earlier, if you're not having fun, then what's the point? You should be having fun. And it's so true. If you're not having fun anymore as the character you're creating, what change? You have power. It's not like your power, that's the whole point. You're controlling a character, you have power. How do you make it fun for yourself? What choices? And in improv on the stage, little choices you make can make a huge difference.
Agreed.
So what can you do to change it for yourself so you are having fun, you are doing something that you're enjoying? Because this is, at the end of the day, this is a recreational activity. We're having fun with each other.
Having fun.
That's the point. Yeah.
And even if you are to that point where you're paying a game master, or you're at a convention and you're trying to find this moment of time, you're absolutely right. What can I do? What do I have control of that can make it more fun? I don't always tell my players, and I always, for the most part, I don't like my players being like, oh, I'm 5 levels in and I'm bored now. Can I re-roll a character? No, come up with what you can do with the character you have.
Mm-hmm.
If it becomes a problem that's systematic, or maybe the character just is not jiving. But I've had players where every 3 or 4 sessions, they're like, I don't know. And then they're leveling a new character up to a different level, and they're not experiencing those moments when they're growing and stuff like that. Because I put all my players at level 1 normally,
Mm-hmm.
because I really do enjoy those moments where they're starting to learn who they are. I tell people all the time, level 1 is a humble beginning. Don't think yourself as the superhero yet. Think yourself as the training superhero,
Mm-hmm.
and especially in 5e. In other campaign adventures and other TTRPGs, you might not be anybody at first level.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but finding a table that meshes with your style of play, that you can tell a story together and be happy about the story, and then make those moments important that are important. And I mean, that's what I'm getting from all of this, our conversation tonight.
Yeah, and if you're really yourself, and this goes for improv, the table, life. If you're really yourself, life,
Life.
life. Uh, if you're playing as yourself, and like you can play a character, play to your comedy, play to your be respectful, but play to your comedy. Then you're finding your people. If one table's not working out, if one group's not working out, then that it's not a bad thing. Hey, it's not a bad thing. You're
No.
discovering yourself just as much as your character is discovering themselves at the table. So have fun with that. Have fun with that level 1, level 0 type of character, because that's what's going to get you to the hero level, like
Mhm.
as yourself, as a player. Taking the time to see like what is my style. And then if you think about it too later on, just playing other games, seeking out other games, like if you know your style, instead of sitting through 6 months at a table with people who don't play the same way that you play, you start to see, like you start to understand, like, wait, this doesn't mesh with me, like I'm this kind of a player. Why don't we figure something else out?
Mhm.
And no hard feelings, like it's just like at the playground. We had our little groups of friends. Some friends loved tag, some friends liked Foursquare, and
Right.
depending on who you are as a player, you might go to tag and you might go to Foursquare. So it's figuring out. And sometimes if you're super cool, if you're a super cool kid, you trade off. One week you're doing tag, one week you're doing Foursquare. So understanding yourself as a player is such a huge part of improv, and I do it all the time. Like I have to do it all the
All the
time.
time. Right.
Constantly working with like different people on the stage, constantly working with my own students, like what kind of players are they, how do we operate, how do we maneuver so they understand and kind of learn how to play with someone else. So like we start to understand after time what that means and how to have fun in the unknown. And it can be the same for you, people. It can be, you can do it too. But like we're having fun, it's recreational, but it's practice. We're
Right.
practicing play, which is so weird because that's what human life is supposed to be. Like that's how we learn as kids. We
Right.
learn through play. Like that's what we do. And it's like the cool thing and the scary thing and the weird thing as adults, we're like relearning how to play with
Yeah.
other people. So have fun with it. Have fun with like
Right.
learning something new.
I do think it's strange because watching, children, especially like my younger ones are like 5 and 9, right? And friends just appear at that age group. Like
They
you
do.
take the kid to the playground, and he's like, "So I made 4 friends today," and I was like, "Do you
Uh,
know their names?" No, but they're your friend, right? Yeah. Why? Because that's all you do. You walk up and hey, do you want to be my friend? Sure. Boom.
uh,
And they run off together.
mhm,
They didn't know each other from me trying to do that today. I'd be terrified. Why? I don't know. It just would be
mhm.
because the world has changed and we've been scarred by adulthood. Like, I don't know.
We have that scar that we created earlier.
Yeah.
That's not just a scar from war. War was just an analogy for the modern life, the 2020s. Congratulations, we broke the code.
We broke the code of adulthood. You know, it's just the scar that you can move past. But it's a good way to end our show tonight, which is continue to play, no matter what age you are, and continue to learn and continue to improv, because it's a lot of fun. I don't know. I never expected to be on a show like this where I would just make up everything I talk about, but I've had so much fun with it. And now we're going on 3 years. So, I've learned my tricks. See if it keeps going.
Well,
but
thanks for having me on this cool show.
Of course, I appreciate you coming on and giving us some tricks and tips on session 0 and how to use improv to really benefit your games, and maybe give some players some ideas on how to build characters, because I think some of the tips you gave at the beginning of the show are really useful for that specifically, is that when people are having problems, what do I do with this character? What can I, glance real fast at your book when you look and see what items you're given as a class or player, and you go, well, what does this actually mean to me? And then, of course, now you have a full story built around whatever that means. But let me make sure my little token thing works. Yeah, there, look at that. So once again, thank you, Angelica, for coming on and just hanging out with us tonight at the Tavern. Everybody, make sure you go check out her page over at thisisimprov.com or check out her Instagram. Is there anything you would like to say before we end the night?
Keep on playing, folks. Ask people their favorite color. Don't be scared to enter a new table, because you never know what magic you can find. And keep saying yes and throughout your game.
There we have it. Best tips of the night right there. I, of course, am your tavern keeper for the evening, and come back every week as we have a new guest every week to tell a different story and to get new tips and tricks to hopefully enhance your games and your play. Until then, see you guys all next week. Don't forget, Monday nights over at Gen Con. Come hang out with us so we can continue our story in Icewind Dale. Good evening.